Okay, here we go. We've actually got minis out today. On the far side of the table, we've got 44 minis, and on this side, we've got 48 minis. These are mostly painted, although I've got some primered ones in there too, most notably here in the Vikings, but I tried to blend them in or mix them. So the turn is turn number 1. We're using the simple mass combat rules that I've done some final tweaks on, and now we're also going to include testing of the simple man-to-man and the simple jousting procedure. Looking at the battlefield here, once again, I've laid out some random pieces of terrain. Back there to your left rear is a hill, pretty small. There's a pond. There's a stream that comes down a gully that's kind of feeding the pond. So the only troops on the far side are some crossbowmen that have taken up position there. And over here on this side, we've got some, we're going to call this the blue side, by the way. So blue side is near you, and red side is far. They've got some, they've got blue crosses, and those guys have red crosses. So red team on the far side. I digress. I hate when I do that. Okay, so let's go left to right. So we've got javelins. We're going to say that they are treated as short spears. So they can't fight 2 ranks, but they'll get online when they fight. They can also toss their spears for 6 inches. Those crossbowmen, I'm going to say, have a range of, what was it, like 15? So they're covering out to about here, and then the javelins are covering here, and nobody's probably going to cross that river, so most likely these forces are going to get shifted over. They're just here to keep an eye on the crossbowmen that the enemy have deployed. Deployment I did randomly. I did 3 sectors, and then I did 4 quadrants in the sector, so dividing each deployment zone into basically a unit of 12. Through some dice rolling, I randomly decided where each of these 6 units would go. The other side also has 6 units. Similarly, it was a random deployment. Oh yeah, and I forgot, there's a farm field over here. That's going to count as rough going. I'm going to consider this all to be kind of a more marshy, muddy area. Okay, left to right. So we've got our 4 javelineers. We've got 4 heavy horsemen. We're not going to include a faction leader, so there's nobody of note here, but we are going to do simple jousting. These are Vikings here in the center, mostly armed with hand axes and spears, and a few swords, a few shields. Interesting mix. Back here, these are more heavy. These are heavy polearm men, so heavy foot for sure with polearms. These guys are longbowmen. As you can tell, they're a little bit larger minis, so they stand out a bit. These are just simply the elves. Elves, in this case, I've got 5, 6, 7, 8. These elves are a mixture of swords and bows, so while they're moving, elves, like in chainmail, I'm going to give them the ability to split move, even though mostly only horsemen can do a split move and fire. These elves can do so as well. They will switch they'll be able to take bow shots, and then they'll switch to hand weapons when they get into melee. Opposing them on the far side are some goblins, which are going to be disadvantaged because it's a sunny day. There are some swordsmen and axemen with shields over there. I think I'm going to count those as heavy foot as well. Heavy horse in the middle. Behind them, once again, longbows. And to the left, some more. In this case, those guys are mostly, yeah, I think I'm going to count them as heavy foot as well. So heavy foot, polearms, and then, like I said, over there on the left, the crossbows, light crossbows with 15 for the range. Okay, that's it. We're going to get started. Probably took me longer than expected because I had to think of a scheme of maneuver here for both sides. I've decided and moved things. Pretty self-explanatory. These guys came off the hill. They wheeled around and are coming at this oblique angle. They think they can get some shots across the pond from over here and keep these, maybe even drive these guys off if they don't have any more shooting to do over there. These guys are standing fast. These guys decided to not charge up the middle to start with. They're going to go in after both units of heavy foot have done their dirty deeds. These longbowmen were able to shoot during the movement phase and scored 2 kills against these guys, and they will get a chance to shoot again because they remain stationary. These were not able to exercise split fire simply because they were too far away. I'm giving them a 15-inch range. Goblins only move 6 inches. I checked Chainmail and I checked Midwest Fantasy Wargame. Both of them agree 6 inches, and the elves get to move 12. So I guess with the elves, we're dealing with light troops in this case, even though some of them are armored. I might retcon that. I've colored some of them with brass armor. So I don't know. Okay, we're just going to leave it at 12 and 6 for now. And then these guys actually did a facing move, moved over, and then did a facing move the other way. They wanted to clear this out because range is halved when you're shooting over troops' heads, but now that they've cleared, and I checked, they could not, there was no opportunity for pass-through fire until they completely moved out of the way. But now these guys will not have a range impediment, so they'll be able to shoot at these heavy foot, advance these heavy foot, yada yada. So we're getting close to having some fun stuff to do. Let me get the missile phase for turn 1. So these guys shot again. They took out one more of these heavy footmen. That took them down. 3 out of the 8 are gone, so not quite forcing a morale check yet. The other fire coming back the other way was ineffective. It's really hard to hit armored targets with bow fire. 6 required. Since they're longbows, only a 5 actually. Goblins moved up. They were subject to the split move fire. I have 3 bowmen here in the back, so I think I'm just going to treat these as the guys that have the bows armed and keep the swordsmen armed with swords. So they took a shot, 1 dice per 3 men. They actually killed one of the goblins because these guys are light. They're not in contact yet, but maybe during the remainder of the move, which I need to complete. It's getting hard to keep track of what I've moved and what I haven't. These guys, these bowmen in the back, they took another shot at the heavy foot over there. The heavy foot were moving obliquely. That's what that toothpick is for. They're still moving obliquely to try and get in front of these heavies as well. And then the heavy horse have fallen in behind, and I'm going to treat that as providing additional cover. So I'm calling these heavy horse at this point arrow-proof, simply because they're covered and armored. These guys were able to take a pass-through shot because nobody got in the way. They were able to kill one of these heavy footmen. These heavy footmen, by the way, since they're down to 5, I have went ahead and rolled their morale, and their morale check succeeded with a natural roll of 5, so they're going to be just fine. Yeah, I have not completed the moves over here. I completed this move. These guys came into contact. I think I still have a little more shuffling to do here. I'm not sure if I did this correctly or not, but I went ahead and moved the goblins and the elves into contact. So we get a melee over there. We've got a melee over here. These heavy footmen couldn't squeeze into the gap, and so therefore they've got to stay there. These heavy horsemen stood fast. So missile fire from these guys during the missile phase, missile segment rather, to these guys, killed another one, so I took off another unpainted mini and kind of consolidated that down. Same thing, these guys still have an open shot here, so they took their fire and killed 2 of the Vikings. And again, I removed a stand of 2 unpainted minis. Okay, so pretty devastating results here on this side of the table. The elves and the goblins came into contact at the same time. There is no order of priority that would have made it easy to decide who the attacker was. I rolled dice, I got double 6s, but goblins get a -1 to all their dice rolls, so they lost out. The elves attacked. They did 5 damage, so they killed 5 of them. Then, as defender, these guys moved up into the front rank to take their counter blows. They do have with them 2 wargs, or dire wolves, which we'll get to those in a second. But first, let's look at goblins. Goblins defend as, according to Chainmail 2nd edition, Appendix D, they defend as Lightfoot, which is why they absorb so many losses. But they attack as Heavyfoot, but they still have that minus on the dice. So instead of a 6 or better, they needed to roll a 7 or better on D12. These guys did okay, and then looking at the wolves, so chainmail second doesn't have anything on dire wolves. Chainmail third does. It says you can treat them as light horse, but that would have only given them 1 attack each. The other way to look at it as hit dice, which I have in Midwest Fantasy Wargame, these guys have 2 to 3 hit dice. So I give each one of them 2 hit dice as if they were light horse. And again, it required, because they didn't have a minus, they only needed a 6 or better to hit heavy foot, the elven heavy foot, because according to Chainmail second, and according to the armor class, etc., elves are treated in the attack as heavy foot and in the defense as heavy foot. Either way, the goblins rolled exceptionally well, and the reason we didn't do any morale check for instability is because in this simple rule set, all the morale checks are done at the end of all of the combats. So it doesn't matter that these guys got shot up by missiles over here to the left. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. No morale checks until the administrative phase. Keeps it easier to run at the table. So anyway, both these units have lost 5 people, and both of them are going to be forced to make a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5 is 11. They've lost, oh, this is magnetic. Great. Okay. They have lost 5 of 11. I'm still going to force them to do the check. Same thing on the elven side. They've got 5 of 8 are down, so they'll have to make a morale check.